Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just going to give it a few minutes until we get started. We'll just wait for a few more people to join us. As you are joining us, we would love to hear where you're tuning in from. So please pop that in the chat box, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. Thank you to those that are still coming in. As you're joining us, please let us know where you're tuning in from. In the chat box at the bottom of your screen, we're just going to wait for probably 2 more minutes until we get started. Thank you to those that are letting us know where they're tuning in from. We've got Eliza from Glen Ennis, Michael from Brisbane, Carol from Gunnedah. Looks like we've got a really good spread. Steph from the NT, Lockie from Coonabarabran. All right, it looks like we've got a decent number on the call, so we might just get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon and giving up your lunch break to spend it with us. My name is Amber, and I'm the marketing manager here at AgriWebb. I've been with AgriWebb for almost 5 years to the day, actually. I am originally from a cropping farm at Taloona in northwestern New South Wales, and now I live out at Rayner in northwestern New South Wales on a cropping farm as well. We are very lucky today to be joined by Mako, who is our head of sales, and he will be guiding the discussion today with our Rayner, who is our guest for the day. Before we get started, I'm just going to do a quick acknowledgement of country. So I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. So to do a few quick intros, and then I'm going to hand over to Mako to guide the discussion. We are very, very lucky to be joined by Al Rayner. So Al is the principal advisor at Rayner Ag. He has had over 26 years of advising beef producers with the primary goal of helping producers to increase their knowledge, their skills, and of course their profits. So thank you so much for joining us today, Al.
Thanks, Amber. Nice to be here.
And then Mako, so a few of you have probably seen Mako's face and or had a few emails from him while you've been in our network. Mako is our head of sales, and Mako is, of course, particularly interested in the business development and business success side of farming businesses and family businesses. So he actually put his hand up to volunteer to lead the webinar today, which is lovely for me. So thank you, Mako.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Awesome. All right. Well, to start things off, again, just thank you so much for giving up your lunch break today. This is a topic that we get a lot of, we hear a lot of feedback on from our customers, and it is really kind of part of our mission at AgriWebb is really trying to make decision making easier and really remove the guesswork from it using data. So really lucky to have Al on, and he's very passionate about this topic, I know. So when we decided to run a webinar on this, he was our first choice for guest. So Al, I might hand over to you just to give a really quick intro into who you are, what you do, and then after that we might dive into the panel discussion.
Thanks, Amber. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to be part of the conversation. It's a subject, as you said, that I feel really passionately about. So my background is as an extension officer, and I've had actually now close to 29 years. So I know I look like I started when I was 5. So my focus has always been on beef production and efficient beef production, but part of that is helping the producers that I work with make better decisions and achieve their goals that they have for their business, for their enterprise, and for themselves. And so now, as an independent advisor, I know I do a lot of different services on farms, and I range from being an agent through to advising on nutrition and so on. But really, the principal focus I have is how do we make better, more informed decisions and be more proactive in our farm management and our business operations rather than being reactive. And that's what I'm really focused on and I'm really passionate about. And I think today's going to be a really great conversation. So
Awesome. Thanks for that intro, Al. Mako, I might hand over to you. Before I do, I just wanted to call out that these Candid Conversations webinars that we've been hosting, we've obviously had a series of them, and we have found that people are kind of enjoying this more casual style, interview style webinar. So please do provide some feedback for us at the end of the session. I'd love to know and make sure that everyone is still enjoying this method of delivery. But yes, Mako, I will hand over to you now to lead the discussion.
Wonderful. Thanks, team. So just first off, if you see me looking away, it's just because I've got my notes on my other screen, so don't feel like I'm ignoring you, Al. I don't want you to think that that's the case. I thought before we kick off with some questions and understanding a little bit more about how to run a farm as a business, I'd just like to set the scene and the mindset of everybody attending as to what we're looking to achieve from this conversation, because I think that's really important to understand the outcomes. And the first place I'll start with is the transition of thinking about your farm as, a passion project or something that you do and you get by with, and actually changing your mindset to thinking about it as a functioning business and how to become a lot more operationally professional, I guess is probably a good word for it, when structuring your day-to-day activities and how you interact with your farm. So if you're happy with that, Al, I'll kick off and ask you a couple of questions and we start the conversation and see how we get on.
absolutely. Let's do it, Maka.
Perfect. So just starting off from your experience, one thing that I'd really love to understand is what sets the confident decision makers apart on farm, and in that, is it mindset, process, tools, software, or a mix of all of that?
It's probably a mix of all of that. You you can't have one without the other and be effective. I think that because so mindset has to come first. You have to build, you have to be very tuned that what we're doing is we are running a business and our business is food and fiber production. And I'll talk about beef because that's my comfort area, but it's no different for any of the other commodities that we are producing. We're producing something that is going to feed and sustain other people and clothe them. So that's the business we're operating in. And if you have that as the mindset, then the processes that are associated with being efficient and effective then come into play. And then as a result, when you're looking for ways to do your business better, the tools that we have available, the softwares or the hardwares, then make sense. But there's no point investing in a software or a new tool if it has no place. And I see that a lot. People often lunge at, "Oh, we'll buy this, we'll purchase this, we'll subscribe to this." But if you're not within the mindset or it doesn't fit within the business because you haven't built a framework, well, all you've done is add another cost to the bottom line. So you nearly need to go the other way and go, be focused, then develop a process, and then find the tools that work within that business rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I think something you said there that really sort of sticks with me is what's the outcome that you're looking to achieve, right? Like if you're looking to run a sustainable farm, or if you're trying to run a profitable farm, or if it's a combination of multiple goals that you're looking to achieve, then building back up from that. You don't go and buy a tractor and then think, right, should I do cropping? That's not really the right train of thought. So it really resonates with me when you say that, setting those goals of understanding what you want to achieve at the end, and then almost building back up it's a great way of thinking about it.
I spend I guess a lot of time with my clients talking to them about that because it's got to be quite specific. I hate acronyms so much, but the one I like is that SMART. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. But this specific thing, because if we just say, "Oh, look, I want to be profitable," what does that actually look like? Is it profit where we are able to reserve and respond to events? Is it to achieve lifestyle goals on addition to being that, so paying bills, being able to educate family, have a holiday every year, actually have that as a expand the farm? What's the actual specific goal we want? Because just to say, look, I want to make more money or I actually want to be sustainable, it's it's actually, someone said the difference between a vision and a dream and a goal is a dream doesn't actually have anything. I want this. A goal is specific. And I think that we actually too often are probably very vague about that outcome. So we really got to find it down.
Well, I think too, you're attaching to those goals, you're attaching things that we're passionate about, right? And that's the truth of it, is that that's what drives me every day. Is, I like to look after my family, I like to look after my land, but what in that actually really motivates me, and once you find those key motivators, it's then right leveraging that motivation to then apply it to the goals. So I think that's brilliant. It
Yeah,
does
yeah.
it does lead me on to something you said there as well, is that at the start is those traps that we fall into. We do fall into, the day-to-day common traps. And I'd love to know from your sort of point of view, what are some of those common traps that farmers fall into that we really should try and avoid, or I think even too, probably from a better train of thought, is recognizing when we are in those traps to pull ourselves out.
I think the one that I often find the most common is this concept of busy being busy. Yeah, like we're busy and we're doing this and we've got this list of jobs in front of us, this list of things we have to do, and we talk to each other and we don't have enough time. I don't have enough time to do this. I'm trying to, and it's then becomes this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy where you get busier and busier and busier and you're constantly actually chasing your tail all the time. Some of those some of those tasks are essentials and some of them actually not. But it's trying, I guess, to actually break the cycle again, come back and say, what is my goal? And what needs to happen to make that um actually work? And then what do I have to do within that? So it's actually, the trap is being busy, when you actually have to have some self-discipline to step back and say, no, stop, right, this is where I am. And I guess data then starts to become into play because you can actually look at it and help make those more nuanced decisions. This is something I have to achieve now. This is something that really will drive and affect everything. And if this is the area I have to work within, then these are the specific tasks on the farm I have to achieve this week or within this month. That's a discipline that we don't always bring to the program. We get up and we go, I've got to do these, the specific, yes, if I don't fix the fence, the cattle get out, that will be bad. But um then we get stuck in lots of those little jobs, and as the priority often becomes on, we spend 80% on our time on tasks that probably contribute 20% to the overall success of the thing. You can't ignore the little things, but yeah, this spiral is probably the biggest thing, we get caught up in.
Yeah, I think that the saying is busy for the sake of being busy, right? And we
Yeah,
feel like if we just do more, then we'll be better, right? And
yeah,
I think probably one thing that a few people in the audience are thinking about is, well, it's nice to say, but I work by myself. It's just me that does that, and which leads me on to sort of my next point, which is that balance between instinct and experience, versus data and technology that we can utilize, to enable us to have one, a better understanding or a better control of what's going on our property, a better visibility. And I guess the question I have for you is, how do you find that balance between I've got to do it myself, or I've got to get my staff working, or I'll just do it myself, and taking the time to put the brakes on and be like, right, I need to find a better way.
yeah. And look, it's a really good question, Mecca. A few years ago, I was the general manager of a fairly large portfolio of farms, and that was often the case on one of my farms, which was a dairy. The team were just constantly, chasing their tail. We were trying to get on top of a range of things from animal health to maintenance and so on. And it felt like we were just sort of spiraling, in terms of that. And so I get that when there's just a single person trying to achieve that. You do at some point actually have to accept that sitting down and understanding your business and the data that it's telling you is as equally valuable as fixing the fence or dealing with the laneway issues that let cows come into the dairy. The difference between data and instinct, I guess, is sometimes instinct can help you make some decisions as you were going, but if I look back, I don't really remember how bad the drought was in 2018. Like I
Mm.
know how bad it was, and I tend to forget how bad some of those cows looked in terms of condition, how little feed we had. But when I look at the data, I go, gee, that's right. Okay, and what does that tell us? So our memories and our instinct gets blurred over time, whereas data and good data can help you look at that and go, that reinforces that, that's clear. And when I look at it on an objective level, which is the value of it, then you make a clearer set of decisions. So you actually have to accept that desk work is a key part of running your business, which is your farming enterprise.
Mm.
Um, and take that time. And even as a sole trader, half a day to sit down and understand your business and what the data is telling you can then shape a series of decisions of what you need to do next, which then shapes that farm operations that you will then go and do. If often instinct can be just a little bit off. It's right, but it's not. Maybe the timing's not quite right too.
I think too, something that I'd like to share on that it's scary, right? Like we've done it a certain way for so long, right? And it's worked, right? It's worked, but the world's changing, and with it is our industry, and it is such a well, it is I think personally, I think it's the most important industry out there, and it's why I get so passionate about seeing farmers adopt technology and change with the times, and that first step is scary. So I guess for me, it's what would you recommend is the sort of whether it's livestock productivity or as I said, we have spoken about dairy, like what is the first step? And I mean, I think for me it would be not being scared to ask, or look at your neighbors or talk to your community and get support and be like, right, I'm going to take this step, but we've done it on our own for so long that can be a scary concept. What would your thoughts be around first steps if someone's looking to increase those data points and be able to make more informed decisions?
I think objective data. Look, never undervalue the collective, knowledge of what people are doing. But what you see over someone's fence, it's a little bit like Facebook. What you see on Facebook is not necessarily always a true reflection of what's going on. Um, Often where I start, I guess it's finding a trusted, objective source of data. Now that's partly, in my field as a consultant providing that, but you could start with something, and again, I'll go back to the beef industry. We've got some really, really clear benchmarks and objectives that have been published. I use things like the Bush Agribusiness Australian Beef Report as an objective starting point for just some clear business metrics around production and around costs and so on, and actually go, well, these are the averages, and I know averages can be skewed a little bit by the high or the low, but as a guide point and say, okay, well, let's at least have a business metric against this. Where do you sit on that? And you can sit down as an individual and go, well, I can answer this, I can answer that, I can not answer that. That data, MLA had a cost of production calculator on the more beef and pastures that you can fill yourself out. And a lot of people, as you say, get a bit frightened about doing it because they want to know the answers, but they don't want to know the answers. Um, and if it doesn't give you the result that you wanted, well, that's actually not a bad thing because it says, here are things that I can fix. So I would, my first point is I would use that as a guide point. Like if you can't tell me how many kilos of beef you produce per hectare, or what your cost of production actually is to produce those kilos of beef, then we're in a bit of, a little bit of pain. Everyone will tell you what, cattle are worth in the sale yards, but that's not an indicator of how profitable you are. So if you can't answer those questions, then like, how do you actually then go forward? Because once you look at, establishing a couple of those things, then you've got, okay, here's a couple of clear metrics. I do that with clients. We've got a way where before I even go and look at their cows, I've got a list of data that says this is where their production levels are. This is their production per cow. The kilos of beef they produce per 100 kilos in the paddock. Okay, I've got a list now of better cows and worse cows. Some of those worse cows look great, but they don't belong here. And
Yeah.
that's an easy decision to talk about, but you do it on that data. So first thing is to actually set some parameters around what you're doing in terms of production. And then you can start to ask the next questions. What do I need to do to make that better? What does better look like for me?
Yeah, I think one thing when I was, doing my research on yourself, and I said you and I have known each other for a very long time, but I did do a bit of research. One thing that really stood out to me was your thinking around treating it like a personal training session in the gym. You don't just go to a gym and throw around weights, and hope that, well, that's going to get me the results I need, right? And I think it's the same when it comes to business. We're farmers, or I'm a builder, or whatever your trade is. You're not an accountant. You're not a um, agronomist. You're not these, and you don't need to pretend to be. So you don't have to be the be all and end all. You don't, you go out and you seek that professional advice, and you seek those people that will help you, whether it's to become fitter or whether it's to manage your tax. You go and find these professionals to help you, and I think we sort of put professionals into buckets of like lawyers and accountants and personal trainers. I'm not sure if they're professional, but they're up there. But you sort of put them, and then we stop for some reason. We sort of stop and go, well, I can do the rest myself.
Well,
As
I think that's right. We do stop, and I know I looked at it a little bit further. I thought about the concept, Andrew, was that I thought about it as a consultant, or as you say, we've known each other for a long time, and working for another company that provided reports for people. And that was great. You'd purchase your report. You got this nice data. It was really good, and we presented it to you. You purchase it, and then what happens? Like it's you've got the data. Good luck with that. And I
yeah,
thought about what I do as a consultant. Like people ask me to come onto their farm, have a look, give me some advice. That's great. And then what happens? They've had that advice. It is, as you say, like we all know how to be fit. You and I know that we should probably do a bit of a run every day, do some exercise.
maybe a little bit more on my
Maybe
side.
a little bit more, but we know that, or we might go to the gym, and yeah, we go to the gym and we do that. But the PT, the difference between a personal trainer, I guess, and just going to a gym or something is the personal trainer keeps you accountable. They actually say, this is what you have to do. I'm going to push you. I don't care that you're sweating and crying and you're going to throw up. You will still keep doing this. And you pay money to do that, because even though you know what to do, someone's holding you to account and actually making you commit to that. And I thought, as consultants or advisors, that's really what we should be doing. I shouldn't just turn up at your farm, Macca, and say, oh, your cows look great. If I was you, I'd probably do X, Y, and Z. It actually needs to go a little bit further with that, which is, right, Macca, I need to see all the weights of your cows and know, your this. I need to see this, and I want to see your pasture rotations, and I want to know where those things are. I'm going to check in with you next week, and we'll see about that. And if you haven't done that, you'll feel guilty, and you say, I haven't got that. Okay, Macca, no worries. Look, we really need this because we need the next thing. So it's that accountability. And that's, I think, the next step in using your data. Like, we can sell you any of the ag software companies, any of the people. We'll see your stuff. We'll give you reports, but it's what you do with those. So the report needs to be considered with your advisor or with your family, or the people that make the decisions on your farm. And then you set out a series of actions. This needs to happen first. This needs to happen, and it has to have dates on it. And we're okay with doing that. But then the dates slide, and then this happened, and then, and it just, cascades again. Whereas if someone's coming in to say, bloody hell, Al's going to be here next week and he's going to want to see that. Right, we'll actually do it. And so it's that accountability that we probably, in a business, we build that in, and we are a business. And that's probably, I think, that concept of the PT is that accountability and that pushing you to do better is where I was going.
Yeah, I have a funny story about that. I have a cattle dog, obviously, and I paid for a very expensive cattle dog trainer to come in and train him up. And the guy was ex-military, and he spent the entire time training me because he's like, I don't care if at the end of the day, your dog's he's going to be with you all the time. You're the one that's going to have to be able to train him and do it on the spot, which I quickly realized I'm not the best at, but that's okay. Give me, I mean, we're talking about at the moment quite, very high level um, frameworks about how you change your thinking and how you change your behavior. Big into that, it's better to know bad news than not know any news at all, because then it's a starting point. But have you got any real examples? And I don't expect you to use names, of course,
No,
confidential,
no.
but a real example of a farm that you've worked with where you've taken that, put it in place, held them accountable, and then, what the result has been of that.
Yeah, yeah. Look, and it's been in the last couple of years, so that's been really quite exciting because I mean, as consultants and advisors, we're continuing to evolve and reshape the way we think, as well as the industry changes. But these guys are down in the southern part of New South Wales, and I first met them at the end of the drought, and um, we really had no system. There was data being collected, but you look at it, it was just, pretty typical of what we always had. It was not quite the red notebook with, um, you know, all those data, but it wasn't far off. It was like, well, I can't, that's nice to know. It's not need to know. Let's actually build. Where do we want to be in this process? Not just responding to the drought, but where do we want to be in 5 years' time? So what we've done over that period of time was started to have some specific reasons for why we would measure those cows, what we were weighing for, what we were looking to achieve, what was the feedback we were starting to get, which was not existed to start with, to so now we have cattle that are going to a specific feedlot and have been sought for the last couple of years, which has been actually that's been really good, personal feedback. But we're hitting the straps for the weights for that, and the compliance has come up. We actually have a different way of selling the cull cows now. They go direct to a processor over the grid rather than just being punted through. The surplus cattle go onto Auctions Plus and they're described and go up that way. So we actually have a series of specific events for groups of cattle instead of just, I guess, a hodgepodge. The same time, we've taken the paddock data that was non-existent. We've started to shape that round into with an agronomist. Like I want more kilos of beef. We wanted to extend the growing season. Well, I'm not an agronomist, but we found an agronomist who then talked to us. So we're up to now probably a paddock re-renovation. They're actually going to sell off a couple of paddocks that don't use it all that can go to a neighbour. But
Well,
there'll be a little bit of infrastructure work into refining the way that the paddocks are fenced up now. So our next step, I guess, then will be, and we've in the last 2 years have started to really clearly, back to this production per cow unit, the production ratio that I like to talk about. I get the list now. So I turn up now and I've already got a hit list of cows to kick out. So it makes my heifer selection and my cow decision process. I'll probably do myself out of a job at some point because we'll get to that
that's what we
thing.
should,
But
right?
that's okay. But every year there's been measurable progress, but it's been a combination of actually some hard work, some data analysis, some pretty tough questions around that. But it's been a really fun process to do with those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that that's the goal of what we should be trying to do, right? I mean, there's enough farms out there that need that help and support. I don't think you have an issue about backfilling a customer, but I honestly think you get them to a point where it's successful, and then it just becomes like a doctor's checkup. You go in there and
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so,
yeah.
so talk to me about tools and technology, digital, that are able to generate the sort of data that can provide us with these insights, and what's out there now, and what you would use if you were going to set up a farm from scratch, or if you're coming from a place of, the notebooks and pen and paper and that sort of thing.
Yeah, look, and that's a really great question, Mackie, because I think that there's two things to be really clear about. I think the first thing is that you have to understand, and it comes back again to that ethos that we were talking about before, that what do you want from your business? Because if you're not careful, you can really quickly get overwhelmed with the data that is available. And you then get to a point where there's inertia. There's actually too much data to make any sense about. So the first thing I think is to be
I
really
just say,
clear about,
can I just say on that, what a crazy change. That
yeah,
that, that it can
yeah,
be
abs
overwhelming now, right? Because it never used to be, right? And
no,
we had
no.
no idea. So it's crazy now that you can be overwhelmed by that.
And you can build, I mean, you can, some of the sophistication that you can get to is great, but you've got to, I think you've actually got to talk to yourself about a progression through that. Look, at the very instance of this is, look, and I know it's an AgriWebb conversation and so on, but I'll be honest, I loved the AgriWebb product because before I was working for my previous company, because for a lot of people, that simplicity of being able to have their own mapping and their own, that concept. But for me, that's nice. But ultimately, it was that ability to start to keep the essentials that we need to have for compliance. So at the very least, I would say, is that, you know, all of us have got an LPA to do, so we've got to be able to comply with that. And the records, you can keep them manually, but why would you do that? And it's easy to miss those. So having a system where you enter the data and it can actually start to be collected and in one place. So if you are audited, you've got it there. That for me always becomes a winner. And then you can start to look at and go, okay, well, yeah, it's nice I've got the chemical things. I'm nice I've got these feed things. Now I want to actually start to see some of these things that are going to take me to the next level. And again, what's my production per hectare? Okay, well, what am I actually producing? Well, if you can't measure that, then that be, but if you can start to look at it, and then your next thing is matching that against livestock or against paddocks. Now you've actually got this range and raft of things to look at. So then that's when you then start to get the benefit of being able to do your driving on your genetic selection on your females and so on. But it makes no sense to be out there chasing genetics and everything else if you've got no idea what the paddocks can do and so on, or if you're going to fail an LPA audit. So the very instance I think is you start with the information you have to have. And let's put it in a easy to access, easy to understand format, and then let's build on to the next one and the next one to the point where you're actually making really informed, powerful decisions with what's coming out of your own thing. The compliance stuff's already taking care of it, so if you don't have to think about it anymore, it's happening as we go. So I like that Lego option of build, 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 build. And so then you can get, then you start to put your other stuff in, your feed budgeting services, your water stuff, all those other things that you might want to have, but they're not going to give you a lot if you don't have the basics nutted out first, I think is really where I go. So if someone came to me tomorrow and said, Al, I want to go into this, that would be my first question. How are you collecting your compliance data to start with? How would you pass the LPA audit? And then we'll work our way onwards from there. So that's probably where we sort of go. A lot of people want to come in at the high end, sexy. It's like you got to get this first before this makes time.
I couldn't agree more. And yeah, it is an ag web conversation. I appreciate that. But my stance, and I tell my team this as well, is it's not about adopting AgriWebb. It's about exactly what you said. Just understanding what you want to achieve and then going and finding what works for you, as long as you're starting to adopt technology in some shape or form.
Yep.
Because I think that's one thing you don't want to happen is be left behind as that curve turns and starts to hit up as the adoption rate of technology on properties and the requirements and the compliance that you have to provide from audits and the likes. As that escalates, it's only going to suck more of your time in if you're doing it by paper, and it makes your life more stressful. So again, adopt a form of technology that's going to reduce some of that and chop
Yeah,
at it. And I love what you said about do it in stages, that Lego build, right? Only take on what that's the only way to do it where it doesn't become overwhelming and daunting, right?
yeah. It's I say to people, it's a little bit, like we say, eating an elephant, isn't it? It's like little bites get your way through, and it's important to think, like also where you are and the practicality. So I was doing some work in Kimberley earlier this year, and we're talking about, like 50 musters to do across the conglomeration of properties. 50% of those yards were portable panels and so on. So, but also what data do those guys need, which is going to be very, very different to the people that I work with in New England.
Mm,
Um, the compliance data is the same. So it's again that, what do we need to have in terms of, they won't be having the chemical treatments and so on, but there's lots of other stuff we want to tick off first. So it's that practicality. And then I think about how you would use it, the access to the cloud, the offline system, can we all have it on a phone, that sort of stuff. The simple usability of it is also important.
mm.
Because you can go, people can go over the top in sophistication, and a lot of people don't need to be there. Like for most people, the phone is pretty powerful.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for pick the software or the technology that you want to work with, and if you're going to invest that money in your business, and that is to for whatever metrics or goals you're looking to achieve, is go to that company that you've chosen and understand what their onboarding, what their training process is, because I think that's a really, if you're going to put thousands of dollars into your business as an investment, you want to make sure that you're utilizing that the best as possible. My next question for you is, I understand that half our audience have begun that step or begun that process of adopting some form of technology. For them, that have started that journey and have started to gather that data and are looking at it going, well, I'm using, call it 5-10% of the data that I'm actually capturing. And the rest seems a little bit overwhelming, a little bit full on, or I'm not sure how to utilize it best. Do you have any advice or direction for them, I should say?
Yeah, look, it's actually probably almost shut that down for a second and step, well, almost like physically step back, but think about what is it that I need to know, and then what is nice to know. So the need to know, can you answer those, first of all, what do I need? So compliance, yep, tick. All right, from a business perspective, what do I need to know? Let's think about the very basic level. Profitability is the difference between the average price you receive and the average and your cost of production. So, and so can you answer that question? All right. Yes, I can. Okay. Where can you make that margin look bigger? And it's probably going to be within your cost of production.
Mm,
And if you can answer those questions, then your next thing is, okay, well, let's understand that. Now I'm going to look at my data and I want to understand my costs a bit better. Costs are really only about 20% of that variability. So now, and you can tick that off and go, okay, well, there's some costs that, but now your data is sitting there and it's probably going to be, particularly with what we're collecting on farm, the production data. Okay, here we go. Well, this is the number of kilos I'm producing. Gee, I carved over, 14 weeks when I thought I was carving over 10. Gee, they were pretty light heifers. You're suddenly starting to look at some actual physical farm metrics now, but you're looking at your data because it's specifically around those goals in a different way. So you're less likely to be overwhelmed. If you just pull it up, you've got no idea what you're looking at. But if you go in with that, so that's often probably where I come into people's businesses, is we're at that point. And I hit them with a bunch of questions. How long did you carve for? How did you, bang, bang, bang. And if they can't be answered, well, then we either have it in the data, or the data, if it's not delivering, well, we're not recording the right things.
mm. But
But
that's
they're
okay.
the easy.
Then you have
Yeah.
an action from there, right?
Then we have an action, which
Yeah.
is right. So when did the bulls go out? When did they come in? When did you practice? All of those things become, the when you look at it, there's almost about, I think, 66 different things I can measure in the fertility process around cattle. Well, if we can tick off the big ones, then we've got the nuances working our way, and that data, they're the questions we can go to the data for. And they become quick things, but you've got to have that framework, otherwise it's just numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Mate, we are getting there in time, and I appreciate everyone still. I've been watching the participant numbers and everyone's sticking around, which I hope is a good sign that we're providing some key insights. What I'd like to do for the last sort of 5 minutes before we open it up to questions and to the audience is just throw 4 questions at you, and I'd love them just to be quick fire, like really short, sharp answers that people can take away and utilize and put into action. So if that's all right with you, of course.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
So it'd be awkward if you had said no. But here we go.
Definitely asked back.
That's it. That's it. So first off, three practical things that producers can do this season to build better habits. What would you say are those three things?
First thing, sit down and actually work out and write it down somewhere what your business goal is, what your enterprise, what you want to achieve from your enterprise. Secondly, then put from that specific thing some measurable things to know you're on track. And third thing is to talk about that amongst your family. Do that first, and that will then start to guide what you need to do next.
Love that bringing the family into it. And just so everyone's aware, we will send out recordings of this if you're not jotting that down fast enough. Second is key decision making traps to watch for for on farm when you're actually in it.
Trying to be too busy, trying to be too big, or getting caught in the minutia. Separate. It's like I talk to people. There's nice to know and there's need to know. There is need to do and there are nice to do. So they're really, be focused on the needs first, and that's going to be driven by your goals at that other point.
Love it. Al's go-to checklist for simplifying complex decisions. You can see I wrote these. Well, I didn't write them. Actually, Amber did, to be fair, but I like that.
I probably have to think about my language. Sort your stuff out first, okay? Like lots of people try to do too much, they're too complex. You have to actually, my go-to checklist, what do you want to achieve? How do you, or what do you want to achieve? Why do you want to achieve it? And then what do we know about that now? And if we can tick those things off, we've got guidance. If we can't tick one of those off, we address that and we start to break it down and set a clear path of going forward and setting dates. Like, yeah. So
That accountability.
we turn it from dreams into action.
Yeah, that accountability is everything. I completely
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amber has just prompted everyone. If you do have questions, please throw them in there. I've got one more for you, and then we will start to answer the questions if there are any. How do you start bringing the team along with you? Because I think too, not just the team, I should say the family, because I think that is like you can't do it on your own, right?
You can't. And the challenge is that if it's all in your head, and everyone who's married knows this, you can't always tell what's in your partner's head. And in a farming business, we are a business. So think about that. In a business, the managing director will have a team discussion with an outcome of where we're going, and it's clear for everybody to understand. Everyone understands their roles. So whoever is running the farm operation needs to do the same thing. Once a week or once a fortnight, we sit down as a business unit and talk about where we're going and who's going to be responsible for these things. And so again, building that accountability and that responsibility back. It doesn't have to be formal board meeting, but we can sit down and actually and write it down. Write it down.
Love
Because
it.
if it's not written down, then it's just, it's going to be, someone's going to argue about it. But it's that transition about becoming a business.
Perfect. So, mate, I appreciate your time. We're going to jump into some questions, and then I'll thank you properly. But
Thanks, mate.
I've really enjoyed it. It's been thoroughly enjoyed. One of the questions that's come through is, how do you cost pastures?
As in costing, I mean, that's a fairly complex one. Costing pastures in terms of establishment and maintenance often tends to be, fairly there's those budgets that we often work on in terms of establishment cost per hectare, maintenance cost per hectare, and so on. I guess it's then looking at that cost in terms of, is it the feed value that we're contributing to the livestock production? So how much consumption did we have? And that might become part of a forage budget that you would actually do, where we're looking to grow X amount of feed to generate this. And you might cost that against, if you wanted to compare it against a purchase in feed or something like that. So the question's probably got 3 or 4 different answers that we might go on, which is probably not helpful to that questioner. But it depends a little bit about what you mean by cost. And that's also important in this discussion. We all talk, the clarity around costs and what we mean. So is it cost of establishment, cost of maintenance, or cost of actually growing it to get to a livestock production outcome?
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head, right? If we're putting in, how much are we putting into that pasture?
Yeah.
Because again, we do treat it as, well, we should treat it as a living, breathing animal almost, right? Because at the end of the day, you think about your livestock and what you put into them at a dollar value and how much feed you're giving them, treatments, and so on and so forth. And then when you sell them, you look at purchase price and combine all that, right? And that gives you that end result. It's the same with the pasture and how much yield you're getting out of it, how much, so again, if you're costing out that pasture, there's so many elements. I would simply say if you struggle with that as well, again, the number one thing you should be thinking is I can reach out and I can get support and I can get help to understand that. But to your point, what are you looking to get out of that and what cost specifically are you talking about?
Yeah.
The next question for you is simple tools to help collect and manage data other than AgriWebb. Of course, there was a winky smiley face in there. There might have been a dig at me, but that's all right. What's the some simple tools?
Look, the simplest tool is probably something, I've seen people use Excel. Like if you want to start with the very basics. The challenge is that collecting data for no purpose is a waste of everybody's time. I've seen lots of people religiously collect data and then is not actually used. Like they feel good because they've got these cow weights or these whatever it is that sits in a notebook or it sits on an Excel spreadsheet and they can't do anything with it. So I guess my recommendation is think about the data that you're trying to collect firstly, and then how you're going to extract it and use it. So, I mean, there are plenty of other software systems, like there's My Grazing, and then there's the practical systems accounts, ABRI for our seed stock operations. We've got breed logic, but we've got there's multiple platforms around, and in all honesty, they're all pretty similar. Okay, they're all pretty similar in terms of what they do. Most of the units come with, like the weigh units and so on, come with a software system that allow you to collect some basic data. My comment that I make to a lot of people is that if they're too difficult to extract data out of, or they're limited in that capacity to do anything useful with that data, you're going to be really annoyed later on because all that data is stuck in there. You've then got to extract it and drop it into something else because you want to go to the next step. So sometimes don't rush into a decision, but take that moment to go, what works for me? What do I want to achieve? Is it this, and this, and then do a checklist and compare them on that, and then think about the usability of your system and your skill set to do that. If you're really just looking to do some very, very simple basic comparisons, some simple analysis and have that happen, Excel will do that and you can build and grow that. But you might want to get beyond just having some simple graphs in Excel to actually extracting that data. It's not going to let you keep your LPA data and so on. So you try and avoid having multiple systems running.
Yeah, I just I touch on that as well. A lot of times people aren't experts in Excel as well. And so for me, I like you said a couple of key things there that I'd like to just touch on that I think are really important. One is it, it's understanding what you're wanting to get out, what data you want to get out. Then once you understand what data you want to get out, finding a solution, and it doesn't need to be AgriWebb, right? As to your point, there are loads of software out there that will get it. But I love the shout of be careful. Make sure you're able to get out what you put in because you want to be able to get out. And as your skill set improves and as you grow within your business and you start to recognize different areas of opportunity within your business, you may expand out past what that particular software does. And then you want to move on to the next one, but you don't want to lose all that hard work that you put in to understanding that, right? So being able to get it out and then import it into another platform is incredibly valuable. So that's one thing I think a lot of people overlook is they think, oh, well, I got it now and this is going to do me for life. But as you grow, you realize you can do things better. You understand, you adapt and you grow. But mate, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for the insight. I don't know if I've missed any questions. I don't think I have. But it's been an absolute pleasure. I don't know where an hour's gone, to be honest with you, because it's flown by. But mate, I can't thank you enough. As always, it's a pleasure having
No, thanks.
with you.
Thanks, Mac. And look, I've appreciated it and I appreciate the chance to be part of the conversation. I know Amber saw that I'm trying something new with Rayner Ag this year. I'm actually doing little short 3-month PT sessions on farm. I'm not turning up with my boxing gloves, but literally that boxing analogy, if you like, or that PT analogy, where I'll look at your data and I'm going to start to try and hold people accountable and just go, for the next 3 months, I'm going to get you to this point. If we want to go further, well, we can, but I really want to do a really short, sharp, let's get you going. Let's get you farm fit to take you into the next thing. So there's a few people who started to say that they're interested. So I'm pretty keen to see how it goes. If I get 10 or 15 people who basically like the little Farm Fit Academy, I'll be pretty happy. I think that'll be a fun thing to do and a rewarding thing. So I'll let you know how it goes in a couple of months, Macca.
I love it. I love it. And what we'll do, we'll share out with everybody that's on this, watching it live, but also those that registered for the webinar and unfortunately couldn't make it. We'll share out your details with them, because I think at the very least, it's worth having a conversation with you.
Yeah.
I think as someone, again, that's known you for a long time, there are very few people that will give you an unbiased opinion and not try and sway you towards a particular product or, and I think you're pretty fair when it comes to that, and that's what I like most about dealing with you, is you're just going to get an honest opinion whether you like it or not, and that's and some good solid advice as to how to put that into play. So I think it's a real privilege, as I've said. Amber, anything you'd like to wrap up?
Thank you both so much. I hope everyone on the call got as much out of that conversation as I did. It really was an awesome conversation, guys. So thank you so much again, Al, and thank you, Mako, for leading that so well. We will be sending out the recording, as Mako said. I'll make sure I include all of ours info. And yes, we hope to see you on the next webinar. This is the last of our business success webinar series, and we'll be moving into our planning for the future webinar series towards the end of August. But before then, we are hopefully going to try and squeeze in one on this crazy booming sheep market as well. So we'll get an expert on in about 2 weeks for you guys. So keep an eye out for that one if that is of interest to you. But yes, we hope to see you on the next webinar.
Awesome.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Guys.